underneath the baskets. Here's what happened.
Oh, that is a major collision for the two of them. They both knock heads.
Devoted followers believed Lexie Hull's season was over after she got an elbow to the face. There was silence throughout Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Everyone anticipated that she would go directly to the hospital. However, the entire WNBA was astonished by what transpired next. Even though her forehead was inflamed, Lexie returned and proceeded to dive for loose balls as if nothing had occurred. Fans of the Indiana Fever are now posing a straightforward query. Why didn't her teammates intervene to keep her safe? Are they targeting the Fever? And without Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark, is this team too weak? The Indiana Fever were under pressure going into this match. There were playoff hopes at stake. Injuries were mounting, and the roster was overworked. Caitlin Clark stayed off the field due to a groin ailment. The guard rotation was already quite weak, and Sophie Cunningham was not present. Players like Lexie Hull had to stand up and assume more responsibility as a result. This wasn't your typical season matchup. It seemed like Indiana had to win the game. Everyone at Gainbridge Fieldhouse understood the significance of this one. Although the Fever were still in the running for a postseason berth, their margin of error was rapidly decreasing. Both teams knew that every possession counted, and Seattle entered the game vying for their own spot in the standings. The Fever wanted to demonstrate that they could still contend without their best players. Additionally, it was the night that Lexie Hull's tenacity shaped the group's identity, even if it came at an unexpected expense. Anarchy broke out beneath the basket early in the first quarter. A rebound was pursued by Lexie Hull. The heads connected with a bang so loud it reverberated throughout the arena as Gabby Williams flew in from the opposite side. Lexie collapsed to the ground right away. For a brief time, you could feel the tension building inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse as teammates froze and fans became silent. As she left the court, cameras focused on her forehead as medical personnel hurried to her side. Swelling quickly developed into a huge knot that protruded right above her eye. When they saw it on the large screen, the spectators in the stands gasped. It seems dangerous in addition to painful. They all thought her night was over. Key players were already absent for the Fever, and now it appeared that one of their most dependable defenders would also be sidelined. Nobody knew, however, that Lexie had other ideas. The course of events would drastically alter the game's momentum. Lexie Hull stunned everyone by returning to the game a few minutes after she had left the court. The moment she set foot on the hardwood, the audience erupted. Despite the obvious swelling on her forehead, her body language conveyed a different message. She was not going to back down, and you could sense the change in momentum immediately. Her initial return of possession revealed everything about her identity as a gamer. A loose ball bounced close to the boundary, and Lexie jumped right in to get it back without hesitation. The arena blew apart. Fans and teammates were given exactly what they needed to see at that one instant. Her purpose was to fight. Lexie finished the game with 9 rebounds, relentless defensive pressure, and an inexhaustible supply of hustle plays despite the collision. She was fighting for every possession inside, contesting shots everywhere, and turning on guards. Playing through discomfort wasn't the only thing involved. It has to do with messaging. However, this amazing show of fortitude raised another query among many Fever supporters. If Lexie agreed to place her body on when she most needed her teammates, where were they? Fans began criticizing the Indiana Fever for being overly soft after the game. Someone on the squad had previously been hit hard, and there had been little to no reaction. Individuals wished to witness a teammate intervene, take a position, and defend one of their own. An elbow to the face delivered by Lexie might have destroyed her evening and possibly her season. However, the majority of the squad did not engage in conflict, push back physically, or even show signs of discontent. That gave many supporters the false impression that Indiana could be ignored. In a league where the tone is set by toughness, being tough is more than just being able to get points. It's about controlling the paint, protecting your teammates, and communicating to opponents that they cannot take chances without repercussions. Teams take advantage of weaknesses when they are detected. That is precisely what FIVA supporters are concerned about at the moment. Indiana loses their enforcers in addition to two scorers when Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham are not on the court, and opponents appear to be aware of this. The injury sustained by Lexie Hull wasn't a singular occurrence. This season, it fits into a growing pattern. First, early in her first season, Caitlin Clark was the target of heavy fouls. Next, Sophie Cunningham, who is renowned for her vigorous play, received her fair share of harmful blows and eventually suffered an injury of her own. However, the most recent instance of Indiana athletes being roughed up is Lexie Hull's swollen forehead. People are raising unpleasant questions because of the timing of these tragedies. Is the Fever being specifically targeted? The team lacks the don't mess with us edge that gives opponents second thoughts when Caitlin and Sophie aren't playing. At every chance, other squads test Indiana's tenacity and scent blood. It goes beyond individual plays. The league as a whole needs to appreciate one another. There may be more collisions, elbows, and hard fouls until they show that they won't be pushed around. The issue is straightforward. There isn't a real enforcer in Indiana at the moment. Additionally, athletes like Lexie Hull will remain targets until someone fills that position. Naturally, Aaliyah Boston has joined this discussion as one of the biggest and strongest players on the court. Fans want her to set the tone physically, but they also adore her technique, her command of the paint, and her command of the boards. Many anticipated that Boston would make an impression following Lexie's vicious elbow, either by joining the fight or by delivering a message during the following possession. Rather, she focused on scoring and grabbing rebounds while playing her game as normal. Critics, however, demanded more. Fire was what they want. Attitude was what they desired. They desired to be in charge. Boston, to be fair, was amazing. In terms of statistics, she harassed Seattle inside while scoring 27 points, pulling down 9 boards, and grabbing many possessions. But her performance wasn't the topic of discussion following the game. Her reaction to a colleague taking a risky hit was at issue. Whether right or wrong, Boston is viewed by supporters as the team's pulse, and they want that pulse to have bite in addition to output. Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark contribute more to the Fever than just goals. They contribute confidence, swagger, and a readiness to defend teammates. In their absence, the full force of the team has a new vibe. Because they are aware that the league is watching and that Caitlin is the center of attention, opponents are reluctant to play too physically when she is on the court. Conversely, Sophie has always been the player who initiates physical contact and never backs off. When you take them both out of the equation, Indiana feels exposed. Without a doubt, Lexie Hull is tough, but she shouldn't have to face these challenges by herself. Until their players return, the Fever need someone to take charge emotionally and enforce the defense, because if they don't, other teams will keep challenging them, and it will become more difficult to compete all the way to the end of this playoff season. Race. Although Lexie's injury was the main topic of discussion following the game, the statistics provide further context. Lexie contributed on both ends, pulled down 9 rebounds, and recorded a good defensive efficiency rating for the team in spite of the mayhem. There was no denying her influence. Aaliyah. Odyssey Sims contributed 22 points and crucial plays in the closing minutes, but Boston dominated inside with 27 points and 9 rebounds. Every time Seattle attempted a comeback, Kelsey Mitchell scored 21 points and made clutch shots. The Fever outscored Seattle 42-21 and held them to just 3 fast break baskets all evening, statistically controlling the game where it counted most. However, notwithstanding such figures, hardiness is still the increased dialogue. Intimidation cannot be measured by statistics. They are unable to quantify presence. And they are unable to gauge if opponents believe they can exercise their rights without facing repercussions. If they wish to make an impression in the postseason, that is where the Fever needs to change. There was more to this game than just another victory. It revealed the Indiana Fever at a turning point. They want to be considered as a contender, yet contenders have more influence over the atmosphere than the scoreboard. Indiana has the talent to compete right now, but they run the risk of being perceived as a team that opponents can bully if they don't forge a more formidable identity. That impression counts, particularly as the playoffs approach and physicality becomes more prevalent. intensifies and each possession turns into a conflict. Stephanie White, the coach, is up against a formidable obstacle, determining how to encourage a more resilient attitude without Caitlin and Sophie being on the ground. Something needs to change immediately, whether it's Boston, Sims, or someone else taking over as leader. The Fever have the pieces, which is wonderful news. They've shown that they can prevail with less players. However, they must more than just skill if they hope to make it through the postseason grind. They require attitude. The enlarged forehead of Lexie Hull has developed into more than simply a frightening wound. It has turned into a symbol, a representation of fortitude, selflessness, and the cost of playing in a league that is becoming more violent by the day. However, it serves as a reminder of what the current Indiana Fever team is lacking: an identity based on supporting one another. Someone needs to fill the position since Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark are still unavailable. The enforcer must be someone. Someone needs to ensure that such evenings don't continue to occur. The Fever demonstrated that they are capable of persevering through hardship and winning games. However, the issue still stands. Can they rekindle their opponent's fear of them? What are your thoughts? Do they need to start sending their own message, or are they focusing on the Fever?